Maruta Shohai Jaha Nahi Prema Vrishti Taha Loje Jai. Nityananda Rai assisted as the wind, blowing that shower of prema where it did not fall. Hud Shabde Ailo, Sri Advaita Chandra, Jolo Rasha, Dhara Kahe, Rai Ramanando. Sri Advaita Chandra came as thunderclaps, and Ramananda Rai came as rain, letting loose a stream of rasa. Choshakti Mahanta Ailo Mege Shobha Koi Shri Rupa Shonatan Kahe Hoilo Vijuri. The 64 great saints came, beautifying that cloud bank, and Sri Rupa Sanatan flashed as its lightning. Vijuri. Vijuri. Krishna Dasa Kaviraja Rosher Bandari Jotane Orakilo Prema Hamo Kumbha Vari. Krishnadas Kaviraj became the storekeeper of that rasa. He collected that prema and kept it carefully in a golden pot. Ebe she prema loje joga jane bilo e dasho lochan bhage bintu na mililo. They distributed this prema to the people of the world, but due to his misfortune, this Lochandas did not receive a single drop. Edasha Lochan Bhagte Bindu Na Mililo. Mililo is past tense of meeting, so I did not, Lochandas did not meet one bindu, one drop of this prema, Shade prema. So it's a kind of ends in a bit of kind of a spiritual lamentation, but it's an extended analogy, right? It's this, it's about a storm, and it's how all these different personages are participating or aspects of that storm. There's the river, Gora Rasa Nadi. There's the Maruta, that's Nityananda, the wind. Hud Shabde. Advaita Acharya is known for making humkar, loud sounds, to call the Lord. It says he invoked the Lord with humkar. But here it's not humkar, it's hud hud. And Ramananda Roy is Jalarasandara. What was that again? It's letting loose streams of rasa. Choshakti Mahanta. There's a tradition, I don't know any details about this, but there's a tradition that there are 64 mahants. Mahant means, sort of, my understanding, it kind of means temple president. So the leaders of different temples in Vrindavan, today they're known as mahants. Who is the mahant of this temple? So the leading person, and somehow there's this number 64, and there's an area in Vrindavan of samadhis, 64 samadhis, that's related to the 64 Mahants. So 64 Mahants, they're, I guess, 64 clouds. And then Rupa and Sanatan, they're the lightning in the clouds. Who's the oh, yeah. So Advaitacharya he's providing the thunder, Ud Shabda, and then the lightning, Vijari. The Hindi word for electricity is Bijli. So, yeah. And then we have Krishnadas. Krishnadas became the storekeeper of that rasa. Raser Bandari. So a Bandari is someone who has a bandar. And a bandar is a shop, right? So he's the shopkeeper. Jotone Rakilo Prema Hamakumbha Bori. Bori, you see the apostrophe after the I in Bori? So usually that is substituting for, in transcription, Y long A. So it would be Boriya. And you'll see also up here, Kori. So that's for Koriya. And that's what's called a gerund. And a gerund is something that's already happened, or it's in the process of happening. And Boriya means being filled or filling. So this hama, this golden kumbha pot, what is it filled with? It's filled with prema. And what is Krishnadas Kaviraj doing? Rakilo, he protected it, he kept that pot. And how did he keep it? He kept it by composing Chaitanya Charitamrita. At least that's my interpretation. Okay.
Shri Advaita
First I'll ask if there's any thoughts, comments, reflections on anything we talked about so far. Anything carrying over from this morning's introductory session. Okay. I hope you all managed to keep Suryadev and Rahu at bay. And I hope that we'll continue to keep nice attention on Lord Chaitanya and his associates and his very special Shastra. We take as Shastra the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I thought if we go to our little chart here, we have in Madhya Lila, there's renunciation and then there's propagation. And propagation is encompassing chapters 7 through 15, and this is inclusive of Mahaprabhu's travels south. He has taken to the renounced order. He has taken a new name, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, which is not a sannyas name. There are 10 traditional sannyas names. Traditional means from the Shankara tradition. There are 10 names. And for the Vaishnavas, because 10 is never enough, we have 108 sannyas names to choose from. One of which is the name Swami, and another is the name Goswami. Many devotees are thinking these are the only two names of sannyasi, but there are many others, including Tirtha and Puri and Aranya and Vana and Sagara, yes. Can think of any others. Bharati. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas from, what was his name other than Bharati? Keshava Bharati, yes. And when he came to Puri and met Vasudeva Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the Bhattacharya said, "What? You're a Bharati sannyasi? That's low class. You can do better than that. But first we have to train you up in philosophy." And so he teaches this very young sannyasi. He's only 24 years old, and Sarvabhauma is worried about him. Such a young sannyasi. Any 24-year-olds here? No, we're all. Yes. And you're so young and, vulnerable. So we need to help you out.
Not just young, but also incredibly handsome.
Yes, young and handsome, and so big and golden and
wow. So Sundar, Gaura Sundar.
Gaura Sundar. Yeah, we have to do something for this lad. So what should we do? Well, we'll teach him Vedanta, of course. And so he teaches him Vedanta, and according to Krishna Das, he listens for 7 days, keeping completely silent until Vasudeva, Sarvabhauma asked him, "You don't have any questions? Everything clear?" And what does he say? He says, "Well, the Vedanta Sutra, Brahma Sutra is completely clear to me, but your explanations..." There's a really, I think, wonderfully done scene in the film. What is there? Two films. There's Nimaya Mahaprabhu. That's it, Nilachal Mahaprabhu, which was produced in what, the 40s or 50s. And it's in black and white, and it's really well done. And the person who plays Sarvabhauma is so good, because he becomes so upset when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, "What do you do? Well, I don't understand what you're talking about. What you say makes no sense." And the person who plays Mahaprabhu is also really good, because he always looks like he's from another world. Yeah. Anyway, so renunciation, and then propagation, and propagation. Actually, it's interesting. The propagation begins by the advice of Sarvabhauma, not really specifically telling him to go and preach, but telling him, "I know someone you really should meet, namely Ramananda Rai, and he's in South, so you should go and meet him." All of this happens after what? After Sarvabhauma becomes what we might want to call a convert. What is the sign of his being a convert? Who can tell us other than Sri Prahlad? Yes.
The next morning when Lord Chaitanya goes to see him, he brings him Lord Jagannath's Mahaprasadam, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he wakes up and he immediately honors the Mahaprasadam without even like rinsing his mouth or anything, and he's in complete ecstasy and saying like, he surrenders to Lord Chaitanya. And also at the end, after Lord Chaitanya gives him the teachings, then Lord Chaitanya reveals his sadvuj form to him.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Composes the verses in glorification of
In glorification. And he also quotes a particular verse, and he misquotes it. Do you know that? Tate nakampam susamikshamano punjana evatma kritam vipakam ritvat vapurvir vidadam namaste
Jiveta Yomukti. He wants to say bhakti. Jiveta.
Yeah. What is it? Mukti. It's bhakti. And what does Lord Chaitanya say?
That's not required.
Not required. Don't go changing the Bhagavatam. Yes. It's not required, because what is mukti? Real mukti is pure devotion. Yeah. So after this conversion, then he is saying, "I know somebody who you really should meet," and he tells about Ramananda Rai, and that's when Mahaprabhu heads south. And this tour of South India, well, I'm getting maybe a little ahead of myself, but this tour of South India can be considered a kind of Digvijaya. You all know this word, Digvijaya? Dig means directions, and Vijaya means conquering the directions. Now, traditionally, a Digvijaya is what kings do. Kings go out with their armies and they go conquering to establish themselves, and they might perform an Ashvamedha Yajna as the sort of root of that, sending a horse in all directions and so on. And then they will have a Rajasuya when they come back home to confirm who is the emperor. Well, this idea of the Digvijay then gets picked up, so to say, in the religious sphere. And so different acharyas are also going on Digvijayas. And they're conquering the directions. And how are they conquering the directions? They are debating, they are meeting opposition, and speaking the higher truth beyond the Purva Paksha of the opponents. So we find this also in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But before we go there, let's back up to what I would suggest is one of the emotional high points of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is in chapter 13 of Madhya Lila. Let me see if I can get us online here. Take one of these and make it bigger and here. Go to 13, 73. Now, what I want to point out here is a few things. Well, is that too small to read?
Yes. Yeah.
Too small. Still too small.
We should be able to make it bigger.
Control plus or something.
Control plus.
Oh, Control Command plus?
Just be control plus. Or is it shift plus?
Oh, shit.
It's the zoom control.
It's zoom, yeah.
And we go like this, like.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just see, you know everything, as Satchidananda Swami will say. Okay, but I wanted to go, well, I don't know, we can try this. Okay, this is beginning the description of the the Jagannath Ratha Yatra. And there's a lot of things that kind of come together in this. A lot of themes come together. One of the themes is renunciation versus bhakti. In particular, with respect to the situation that there is Lord Chaitanya, the renunciant, Bhakta, and there is King Prataparudra, the householder, Bhakta. And what is their relationship? Is there a relationship? And how can there be a relationship? And there's a lot of, that's sort of the, how to say, that's a parallel story that's going along with the story, which is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu relating with Krishna. And what is that relationship? That's a relationship of overcoming the feeling of separation between Radha and Krishna, so to say, or trying to overcome. In any case, a lot is going on here. And in the midst of all, this is all happening in public. Very public. And it's interesting that Mahaprabhu is going to be exhibiting very intense emotions and also displaying in his body ecstatic, what Prabhupada always calls symptoms. I always think a symptom is something of a disease, whereas a quality, a characteristic, but maybe I'm wrong. In any case, all of this is being described, and about the kirtans that are being organized. So we get also lists of devotees, and this comes back to the point I made before of how specific descriptions which one could take as historical. Why would Krishnadas Kaviraj be giving so much detail unless there's some substance to those details? So, Srivas Ramai, Raghu Govinda Mukunda, Haridas Govindananda, Madhava Govinda, the Lord's devotees, including Srivas Ramai, Raghu, Govinda, Mukunda, Haridas, Govindananda, Madhava, and Govinda, all combined together. There's two Govindas there. Maybe that's a mistake. No, it's Govinda, Ananda.
Yeah.
Govinda, Ananda.
The verse has 3 Govindas.
There's 3 Govindas.
2 Govindas and a Govindananda.
Yeah, there's so many Govindas. Okay. Whoops, each time I have to do this.
If you want.
Oh,
And then it will.
huh?
Matters if you zoom back out and you go to edit and zoom in, then the page will break properly. You won't have to scroll back and forth to see the whole sentence.
Say that again.
Yeah?
Edit,
View.
view, zoom in. Oh. Oh. Oh.
Is that big enough?
Yeah, I think it's better.
She
You
knows
know
everything.
Okay. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desired to jump high while dancing, he placed these 9 people in the charge of Swarup Damodar. A couple of things are interesting here. One is the mention of Swarup Damodar and putting 9 people in charge, or him in charge of 9 people. Swarup Damodar was super important to Lord Chaitanya in so many ways. He was the gatekeeper of who could approach Mahaprabhu, especially with anything written. And he was tough. When he didn't like that anything someone wrote, which was not proper Siddhanta, he would blast them. And then he would apologize. But we also hear that Raghunath Das was put in the charge of Swarup Damodar, and he's known as what is it? Swarupera Raghunath. Yeah. And it says he desires to jump high while dancing. Presumably, what's the connection with putting these 9 people in the charge of Swarup Damodar? presumably he wants to make sure they don't get in the way while he dances. It's going to be some serious dancing going on, and watch out. Right?
You have the painting
Yeah,
behind you,
my
right?
friend, yeah.
Ah, yes. He's dancing. Okay, these devotees, Swarup Damodar and the devotees in his charge, sang along with the Lord, and they also ran beside him. All the other groups of men also sang. So another point here is, this is all very organized. Certain number of singers, certain number of mandanga players, and so on. And there's so many groups, and it's all specified. Offering obeisance to the Lord with folded hands, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu raised his face toward Jagannath and prayed as follows. Okay, now one thing we might wonder is, how does Krishnadas know what he was praying? Maybe Swarup Damodar had very good ears to hear everything he was praying. Maybe Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Swarup Damodar later what he was praying. Maybe Swarup asked him, what were you praying? Oh, this is what I was praying. We don't know, but what do we get? We get some philosophy here, and this is a general point, and it's maybe obvious, but the artistry of Krishnadas in interweaving Leela and Tattva, or narration and ideas or philosophy or theology. This is, we kind of take it for granted. We think Krishnadas is just recording what happened. No, he's being very selective. He's working through everything and building and highlighting and weaving everything together in such amazing ways. Okay, we know this verse. Everyone, Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanaditaya Cha Jagaditaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Krishna, who is the worshipable deity for all Brahminical men, who is the well-wisher of cows and brahmanas, and who is always benefiting the whole world. I offer my repeated obeisances to the personality of Godhead known as Krishna and Govinda. Now this is a kind of, we could say, a formal pranam prayer, and it's appropriate certainly to be offering to Lord Jagannath. Where is this verse from? Anyone know?
It says Vishnu Purana.
Yes, Vishnu Purana. And who is speaking it? Do you know? It's Prahlad Maharaj. And it's one of the prayers which he speaks while, after he's been thrown off a cliff to the rocks below at the ocean, as he's flying through the air with the greatest of ease. He recites several prayers that are there in the Vishnu Purana, and one of them is this one. So, I don't know, I find that interesting that if you sort of juxtapose these two things, you know, what was going on, Prahlad Maharaj, who is Prahlad, what is his relation with the Lord, what situation he was in, and then that becomes what's the word I want, appropriated by Mahaprabhu, appropriated, we can say by Krishnadas, appropriated by the followers of Lord Chaitanya to worship Lord Jagannath. So there's a rich, the Chaitanya Charitamrita is an example of rich, what the scholars like to call intertextuality, where some other text is woven into this text. And that text may have another, it may be also woven in from something. And there's a kind of echo chamber, I like to say, of Vedic reality, if you like, which we are invited to enter into as we hear from these texts.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Are we, so did I understand correctly when you said we're weaving also the mood of the verse when Prahlad prayed, so we can, I guess I don't really understand how those two moods connect to each other, or how Lord Chaitanya is exhibiting the mood of Prahlad being flung off a mountain in that moment. I guess I don't understand how those two connect together.
Well, he may not be thinking of that particular situation, but we might be aware of it and just be thinking how what a variety of ways that devotion is expressed. In this case, with the same verse. So Mahaprabhu's moods may very well be very different. But then we can kind of remember, oh, yes, this was spoken by Prahlad. And what was his mood? And what was that situation? And that can sort of take you, it can take you around to make other connections. You can go back to the 7th canto of Bhagavatam and think how Prahlad is glorified. And in this way, it becomes an exercise in smarana, which is can be very enriching. Or you can kind of not go that way and just say, okay, let's see how this is connecting with the story that's being told here. Yes.
And when we see this verse as Gaudiyas, we also think of the verse glorifying Lord Chaitanya, Namo Mahavadanyaya,
Yes.
because we chant them together.
Yes, when we make offerings, holy offerings.
And so
Yes.
that's also interesting to
Yes.
consider.
Namo Mahavadanyaya, Krishna Prema Pradayate, Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya, Name Gauratishe Namaha. Now comes another sort of verse. Shall we chant this together? Jayati Jayati Devo Devahi Nandana Sam, Jayati Jayati Krishna Vishnu Vamsha Pradipa, Jayati Jayati Mega Shamala Komalango, Jayati Jayati Prithvi Bharanasho Mukunda. This verse was posted in the Brahmachari ashram of Schloss Rettershof in 1975, I think it was there, I remember. And it was called the Jayati verse. And it was allowed for all the bhaktas and brahmacharis and whoever wanted could chant this verse to sort of counter or whatever, to function where the Brahmins were chanting the Gayatri mantra. All the others, we could chant the Jayati mantra.
Jayatri Jayati, they kind of rhyme, right?
They must be related somehow. All glories unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as the Son of Devaki. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as the light of the dynasty of Vrishni. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose bodily luster is like that of the moon cloud, and whose body is as soft as a lotus flower. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appeared on this planet to deliver the world from the burden of demons, and who can offer liberation to everyone. Now I just remembered, I have to correct myself. Our Jayati mantra was different. It was from the Bhagavatam. Jayati Jananivaso Devaki Janmanadu. That verse, kind of similar. In any case, this is from Mukunda Mahala Stotra of King Kulashekar. Yes. So again, it's a kind of intertextuality drawing from one of the alvars in this case. And that might raise for us the subject that the alvars are, of course, considered very important in the Sri Vaishnava tradition for their expressions of bhakti. There is a theory, one can take it or leave it, but one scholar wrote an entire book on the subject, arguing that the Srimad Bhagavatam was a later text which was inspired by the alvars, the 12 alvars. Well, you could probably argue the reverse, that the alvars were inspired by the Bhagavatam. But in any case, for the Sri Vaishnavas, this tradition of bhakti is there, it's very strong, and it does include much of the richness of our understanding in the Gaudiya tradition of emotions related to the Lord. And I think that is something that we may not be aware of. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. You're just in time.
You mixed it up.
No. Oh, we even have fully prepared. Nice to see you after so many years, Lars. We're just reading now from Madhya Lila chapter 13, the beginnings of the Ratha Yatra, description that Krishnadas Kaviraj gives us. And I think this section is important for us, followers of Srila Prabhupada, because of our own history as a mission in the West of staging Ratha Yatras. And I think we, in the sort of preoccupations that we all have in the performance, or the arranging, the planning, and then the arranging, and then the having Ratha Yatra, we might not be thinking so much about what is actually going on in what for us is the prototype Ratha Yatra. The prototype Ratha Yatra, in a sense, is that of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu leading the procession. And what is he doing? He's offering prayers, and he is expressing his devotion, expressing in such ways that only some devotees understand. And so, as I said, this is a completely public, I want to use the word performance, because in some sense it's performance just by virtue of the fact that it's public. And It's public, and at the same time, it's highly intimate. It is an intimate expression of intimate feelings going between Lord Chaitanya and Lord Jagannath. And that's being perceived not by everyone, but it is being perceived by some, and in particular, it's understood by, who is it understood by? Srila Rupa Goswami, yes. But there's one other who seems to understand something of what's going on. King Prataparudra. So, and again, that brings us with this, there's this sort of dialogue going on. There's renunciation and bhakti, there's grihastha life and bhakti. In this case, a grihastha who is a king, and therefore in a position of worldly power. And I think there's something there also to think about. There was I'm not sure, I think he was a Nobel Prize winning economist named Kenneth Boulding from some decades ago. And I remember one point that he made, which I found nice. Do you want to hear?
Yes.
He was an economist. He said there's three kinds of power. There's threat power. You know about this. You know Kenneth Boulding. There's threat power. There's exchange power. And there is love power. And of the three, he said, love power is the greatest. It's the most powerful. It's an economist. You'd think he would say, it's exchange power, it's about money. So, Prataparudra is in this position of, threat power, in effect, and maybe a lot of exchange power. And he's becoming, in a sense, overpowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just by his presence. Oh, here's the verse. Jayati Janani Vaso Devaki Nanda Yadavara Parishat Svartor Virasyanna Dharmam Stira Chara Vrijinagna Susmita Shrimukena Rajapura Vanitanam Vardhayam Kamadevam. Lord Shri Krishna is he who is known as Jananivasa, the ultimate resort of all living entities, and who is also known as Devaki Nandana or Yashoda Nandana, the son of Devaki and Yashoda. He is the guide of the Yadu dynasty, and with his mighty arms, he kills everything inauspicious as well as every man who is impious. By his presence, he destroys all things inauspicious for all living entities, moving and inert. His blissful, smiling face always increases. What? The lusty desires of the gopis of Vrindavan, may he be all glorious and happy. Isn't that rasa bhasa? In the same verse, rasa bhasa, not rasa. In the same verse, we have the Lord with his strong arms killing whatever is inauspicious, and we have that same Lord all of a sudden at the end, Rajapura Vanitana Vardhayan Kamadeva. Suddenly he's Kamadeva, and he's Vardhayan, he's increasing the lusty desires of the gopis, Rajapura of the Vanita. Interesting. So, why is that particular verse quoted? Well, we could say, because Lord Chaitanya sang that verse. Why did Lord Chaitanya? Because that was his mood. But he's also leading into, I think we can say, his deeper mood. He's leading into that mood, or Krishnadas wants to highlight how this is happening. Okay, then we have this verse. What is this from? It doesn't say. Naham vipro na vivaisho na shudro naham varni na chagriyavatir no vanasto yatirva kintu prodyan nikila paramananda purnamritabdir gopi bhartu pradakamayor dasa dasa nudasa.
It's in the Rupa Goswami's Padyavali, but I can't remember the original.
Oh, thank you, yes.
It says, verse
Well, that does
74.
Oh, there it is, yes,
Mhm.
good, thank you. I'm not a Brahmana, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm not a Shudra, I'm not a Brahmachari, I'm not a householder, I'm not a Vanaprastha, I'm not a sannyasi. What? Then, what are you? The servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. Who is this Lord Krishna? The maintainer of the gopis. He's like an ocean of nectar, and he is the cause of universal transcendental bliss. He's always existing with brilliance. So, Gopi Bhartu, Pada Kamala Yoho, Das and Das and Das. Again, it's leading into, we can say, Mahaprabhu's inner mood. By first of all, one could probably make some sort of logical analysis of this. He's first of all eliminating what he is not. I am not any of these external designations. But it's not that he is without any designation. What is his designation?
The servant of the servant of the servant.
Yeah, he's a servant but servant of who?
Lord of the gopis.
The Lord of the gopis. Lord of the gopis, gopis, gopis. You know that there's a prayer in Bhagavatam, 1st canto, chapter 9. Bhishma Deva is offering prayers to Krishna. Bhishma Deva is dying. And what does he do? He remembers the gopis. There's one verse. Okay. Let's keep going. Okay, then, now Krishnadas comes and he's going to explain. Aptavadi punarapi korila pranam joda hatte bhaktagana bande bhagavan. Having recited all these verses from scripture, the Lord again offered his obeisance, and all the devotees with folded hands also offered prayers to the Supreme Lord. So it's all still very formal. You know, folded hands, we're offering prayers, preparing actually for the procession. And then comes the descriptions of the procession and how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gradually, or not so gradually, becomes absorbed in such a way that he cannot contain himself. Literally. He simply cannot contain himself. Yes, it already starts here. Uddanda Nitya Prabhu Koriya Hunkar Chakra Brahmi Brahmi Jajche Olata Akar. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced and jumped high, roaring like thunder and moving in a circle like a wheel, he appeared like a circling firebrand. And this was during the daytime. You don't really see a firebrand during the day. I mean, you don't see the same effect as you would at night. But we could say because Mahaprabhu was so brilliant, it was as good as if everywhere was dark, and the brilliance of Mahaprabhu prevailed, you know. Nritye Prabhur Jahan Jahan Pade Padata Swasagara Shaila Mahi Kore Pralamal. Wherever Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stepped while dancing, the whole earth with its hills and seas appeared to tilt. Yeah, so Mahaprabhu he's moving the whole world in effect. This is how Lord Krishna Das is described. It's very powerful description. And now he's describing what are his, as Prabhupada would say, symptoms. Shtamba Sheda Kulak Ashrukampa Vaivarno Nana Bhave Vivashata Garbha Harshatano. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu danced, he displayed various blissful transcendental changes in his body. Sometimes he appeared as though stunned. Sometimes the hairs of his body stood on end. Sometimes he perspired, cried, trembled, and changed color. And sometimes he exhibited symptoms of helplessness, pride, exuberance, and humility. I think Krishna Das is inviting us to picture Lord Chaitanya. He's giving graphic description, and he wants us to picture. He wants us, therefore, in a sense, to use our imagination, because it's the images which he gives us in words that then manifest in our minds, and we naturally make into a picture, or we may be helped by paintings such as this, where the artist has imagined, because he or she, and I'm sorry, I don't know who painted this painting. Anyone know? Who was the artist? He or she may very well probably read this description, and from this description pictured in their minds the scene, and then considered how to compose the scene in such a way as to highlight what's being described in the text. So we are being invited, and we can take help from paintings, or we can have our own picture, or we can become ourselves artists and paint our own pictures, or draw our own pictures, or dance ourselves to imagine. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities, artistic possibilities. Notice something else. We're getting a list of emotions. And of course, these are described by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And so one thing that's going on here in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is that Krishnadas Kaviraj is illustrating, as I mentioned earlier, writing mainly in Bengali. He's writing for the Bengali devotees, and he wants to convey to them what the Goswamis are teaching in Sanskrit. And one thing they're teaching is what are the symptoms, what are the characteristics of the real thing, of real ecstatic devotion. What are the, I always get the terminology mixed up. There's Anubhava, there's Vibhava. I think this is Vibhava.
These are Sattvika Bhavas, so the external manifestations.
Yeah, Sattvika.
And then the last few are internal.
Ah,
So that would be like Anubhavas.
Right.
the hopelessness,
garba.
and the pride, and the humility.
Yes. Yes.
It's 8
garba,
external,
harsha.
and then like 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 internal.
Yes. Vivashata, helplessness. Oh yeah. Yes, thank you. That's nice. So this is Rupa Goswami, and he's being represented by Krishna. But how is he representing? He has Chaitanya Mahaprabhu demonstrating all of these qualities, all of these sattvic
Governor, so when I read such descriptions, I always wonder, in our ISKCON culture, we're not really encouraged to display external symptoms of ecstasy.
You might get thrown out of the temple.
So we may feel the anubhavas, that was really helpful. But yeah, so how do we understand this in the culture we've created, the spiritual, our spiritual culture here?
Don't get me started. Well, let's see, what can we say briefly? It is interesting that this is now being described as being completely public.
Mhm.
And so if we think of our sort of, how to say, more limitedly delineated public, yes, we may have in our culture, we may feel we don't have a place for such intense expressions of emotion. And what I'm always thinking about that is, it'll be interesting to see what happens when someone really shows these. What will be the reaction? I find myself sort of thinking like a sociologist, like, interesting phenomenon. Let's see how everyone reacts to this. So, what do we do about that? Well, in this context of talking about it in this case, yes, it's public, and at the same time, Krishnadas has first described all the devotees who are surrounding Mahaprabhu. And they're surrounding him in concentric circles. Some are closer and some are further back and some are further back. The closest ones, they are his intimate associates. And so we could say Mahaprabhu feels safe in that condition with particular devotees. They've all been selected, you know. So in that state, this can go on. We might also want to remember how Mahaprabhu, soon after he comes back from Gaya and begins having his nocturnal kirtans at the house of Shivas Thakur, is very concerned that no one unauthorized is present. Who is it who sneaks in? What's his name? There's one devotee sneaks in, or someone else lets him in, and Lord Chaitanya at one point he stops and says, "Somebody's here who shouldn't be here." And then he comes out and he scolds him. Isn't this the devotee who has decided he's only going to
Milk
eat fruit?
drinking brahmachari.
Yes.
I don't think he's named.
He's not
I haven't
named.
come across the name, but milk drinking brahmachari.
Milk drinking brahmachari. Yeah, and so the idea there is he's an outsider. Even though he may be so austere, and this comes to this topic of renunciation versus bhakti, in this case his renunciation does not qualify him. And Lord Chaitanya feels it, even he doesn't see him. He feels somebody's here who doesn't belong here. Why am I not feeling ecstasy? He said. Oh, there must be someone here who shouldn't be here. And then he's identified, and then he's sent out, I guess. And then, okay, now, now he can feel free to express himself.
Also, I think Srivasa's mother-in-law
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
was hiding at some point, and same thing happened.
Same
He took her by the hair.
Srivas Thakur's mother.
Yeah, mother-in-law.
Oh, mother-in-law. Yeah. So I don't know if that gets to this issue at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering just also in terms of etiquette, if we see somebody genuinely exhibiting these symptoms, like, do we pay respect? So not to be judgmental, so that
Right.
that would be the proper etiquette, because I would imagine, if I'm next to such an ecstatic person, I might experience my ripple on me as well, but what would be the proper etiquette if we're in this presence? That's what I'm wondering.
My first thought is give them the benefit of the doubt that it's genuine. At the same time, we're also warned to be cautious that there are persons who will put on a show, and then those probably say, kick them in the face. There's a lot of extreme between offering respect and kicking. So it is a touchy thing. Isn't it? I have to think about this. I don't know if I have a good answer, a good specific answer. I hope I'm not in that situation. Ever put in that embarrassing someone that's falling on the floor. With Lord Chaitanya, they really worried about him sometimes, you know. He would dance and then he would collapse. And, you know, with a loud sound, like it must be really hurting his body. They were worried about him. Of course, Balabhadra Bhattacharya was so worried about Mahaprabhu when they came to Vrindavan. It was practically a daily event that Mahaprabhu would suddenly dive into the Yamuna. And he wouldn't come up. He was so absorbed, it was like maybe he doesn't need to breathe. So, you know, he was remembering Krishna in the Yamuna, and so he dives in and he stays down. And then apparently Balabhadra Bhattacharya would have to dive in to drag him out. And it got to a point where Balabhadra says, you know, Mahaprabhu, or Prabhu, he says, can we please leave Vrindavan? It's too much, you're too ecstatic here. In Bengal, there's a lot of, at big festivals, you know, thousands of people come together. And then people will start showing something. And you do sort of wonder, what, is there something substantial to this? Yeah. And some, I mean, the more academic approach is, what is the social phenomenon going on here? Because this is not happening in a social vacuum. It's happening within a milieu where something is being encouraged in some way. Why is that? How is that? But I don't know. You can deconstruct something, and what are you left with? Nothing. So I don't have a definite, and I don't think there's a simple rule of thumb for that. I think also if someone is showing, well, some symptoms I would think you cannot fake. Isn't it? I don't know, the perspiration and the hair standing on end and the shaking and the changing of color by Varnya. I don't know. There's a book by one scholar, one lady, Jim McDaniel. She's written an interesting book called The Madness of the Saints. It's an anthropological book, based mainly, also some textual. She interviewed different contemporary saints of Bengal to sort of try to understand what is going on. What is all of this ecstasy all about? Of course, we would say, well, she's licking the bottle of honey from the outside of the bottle, but she did not understand. But there are some interesting insights there as well. Maybe a couple more verses from this, and then we can go to something else. Achara kanya pade bhume gari jai Shubarn parvata jaiche bhumete lodhai. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fell down with a crash while dancing, he would roll on the ground. At such times it appeared that a golden mountain was rolling on the ground. So he makes an analogy here, again, to give a strong image. Wanting, I would say, wanting us to picture what is happening. Nityananda Prabhu Dui Hatta Prasarya Prabhure Harite Chahe Asha Ashadanya. Nityananda Prabhu would stretch out his two hands and try to catch the Lord when he was running here and there. So imagine this picture.
He's right.
That's it.
The painter is prediction.
Oh, it's prediction. Yes. Yeah. Turn them. So now we know exactly which verse he was painting. Nice, okay. Prabhupada Chebule Acharya Korea Hunkar Haribola Bole Bar Bar. Advaita Acharya would walk behind the Lord and loudly chant Haribol, Haribol, again and again. Advaita Acharya Haribol, Haribol. Yeah, we're having a multimedia You may or may not know that the Maha Mantra with all 16 words is nowhere to be found in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's found once in the Chaitanya Bhagavata. Why is it not in Chaitanya Charitamrita? My first answer is, you'll have to ask Krishna Das Kaviraj. But another answer could be that it is traditional when it comes to mantras to not spell them out in Shastra, but if they are given, they will be given in a mixed up way, because they're not to be simply read and taken from Shastra, they're to be taken from the Guru. We find this in the beginning, near the beginning of the Brahma Samhita. where you'll find those of you, which is most of you, who are chanting the Gayatri mantras we received from Srila Prabhupada. For what reason I don't know, is usually called the Gopal mantra, the second to the last of 7 mantras. That mantra is there in the Brahma Samhita within the first 28 verses. But it's mixed around, it's jumbled. It's kind of all there, but it's kind of jumbled. Krishnadas Kaviraj, he gives us Hari Bola, he gives us Hari Hari, and I think sometimes Krishna Krishna, and I don't know, maybe Rama Rama. But he never gives us Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But Srila Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila chapter 8, many times in the purports, there's one purport I think he gives the Maha Mantra complete, not once, not twice, but 3 times in one purport, and it's in a few purports. It seems like he's taking every opportunity to say, now's your chance, chant this mantra. Yes.
That was really my question. Why would Srila Prabhupada break from that tradition that was established by even acharyas that he's following, like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami?
He speaks about this in Bhagavad Gita with respect to the verse in, 3rd or 4th chapter, saying that one should not disturb the minds of those who are absorbed in karma. He says, in effect, despite Krishna's instruction, devotees take the risk in order to spread the mission, to spread Krishna consciousness.
So is the understanding that because he was doing more active outreach than Kaviraj Goswami or other acharyas, that he would take a different mood?
It could be that, or it could be that his mood was, as he would at least once say, my purports are my ecstasies. He is in an ecstatic mood himself while he's writing, and in his ecstasy, he can't contain himself. He writes the Maha Mantra. Yes.
It's also a good point, because I was thinking when you mentioned that, like, he was overseas, he was so far away removed from the culture where this was happening. So he has to be very explicit to convey, what does it mean? Even when he says the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, he has to be very explicit.
He has to spell it out. Yes.
There's also a tradition of acharyas in their compassion breaking with the secret keeping of mantras.
Famous story from Rama.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a nice precedent there that
It's a good one.
he takes forward.
Yes. Yes, it seems, and that's interesting. It seems like that tradition runs along, almost parallel to the tradition of keeping secrecy. It's one side of it. It's like it's the same tradition saying, this is confidential, this is secret, be careful. And the other side of the same tradition is saying,
Give it.
give it out, we have to save the fallen souls.
I think Kaviraj might also refer to Hare Krishna iti, Hare Krishna, etc.
Yes. Hare Krishna. Yeah. The iti in Sanskrit is often well, it's usually meaning like quotation marks. Hare Krishnadi would mean Hare Krishna, etc. I don't know if Hare Krishna maybe could be like etc. Okay. Lokanivarite hoilatina mandalan pratama mandale nityananda mahabalo. Just to check the crowds from coming too near the Lord, the devotees formed 3 circles. The first circle was guided by Nityananda Prabhu, who is Balaram himself, the possessor of great strength. All the devotees, headed by Kashishvara and Govinda, linked hands and formed a second circle around the Lord. And then Bahire Prataparudranaya Patragan Mandalam Haya Kore Lokanivaram. Maharaj Prataparudra and his personal assistants formed a third circle around the 2 inner circles, just to check the crowds from coming too near. So here Prataparudra is offering service. And of course this is the key. The other service, the famous service, is the sweeping. And that service is special. Why? Because for the king to take such a lowly position, in Indian society, sweeper is a very lowly occupation, generally understood. So when he sweeps, Lord Chaitanya is impressed. And that opens up the channel so that they can connect. Because what is the connection? The connection is bhakti. So it becomes clear that the connection is bhakti. It's not the power connection. It's not the exchange. It's not the, it's not exchange power, it's not threat power, it's love power. I always remember regarding the king sweeping, you may or may not know, the present king of Puri, the Gajapati Maharaj, he's actually from a different line. I think this line of Prataparudra was broken soon after his reign. But then the next series, so there's the Gajapati Maharaj. He's a life member of ISKCON, and he's quite well educated. He has a master's degree in, I don't know what, from Northwestern University. And apparently he likes to travel because I've met him twice in Germany. And the second time I met him was in Berlin, where we were just that day preparing for that day to have Rath Yatra. And when the king showed up, we said, Maharaj, you're just in time to sweep the street. And he said, in all seriousness and very humbly, he said, I'm very sorry, but it's absolutely strictly forbidden for me to do this service outside of Puri. If photos of me sweeping would come back to Puri, the Brahmins, the priests, would have me in deep hot water. He didn't say that, but he said, I'll be in trouble. Who should be doing the sweeping? He said it should be the mayor of Berlin. We invited the mayor of Berlin. Did he come? But what did the king do? He attended the Rath Yatra. He walked on the procession on Kurfürstendamm, the big central street, and he walked barefoot the whole way. Which was embarrassing to us. We were all with our big clodhopper shoes. always say, better not to walk barefoot because there may be broken glass. I don't know, maybe that's just an excuse. Comments, questions about any of this?
But just, yeah, even today, the kings, they sweep the chariot rather than.
Yeah, they stay up on the chair.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I found that Hare Krishna appears in the Antya-lila in verse 956, when Mahaprabhu is inquiring what was Vaninath Rai doing when he was being arrested. And this messenger describes he was chanting Hare Krishna incessantly. And Prabhupada, in his translation, he makes it Hare Krishna, the full Mama.
Right. Oh, thank you. That's nice. Yes, Prabhu, please remind me of your good name.
Yeshua Guladas.
Yes, I just was testing you to see if you know.
In New Jersey, in the Parsippany Rath Yatra last year, the mayor of Parsippany actually swept the streets before the Rath Yatra started. Because he was told about the significance of Rath Yatra and what happens, and he said, please give me a broom so I can sweep.
Oh, very good.
African American man.
Do you have photos of that?
Yeah, there's videos and photos of that.
Next time we can show the mayor of Berlin.
And he walked the whole procession, he pulled the carts and, he was just serving the devotees.
Yes. Okay, don't get me started. Thinking about other political leaders, if we could get them politically. Right? What do I want to do next? Let's go to our handout, and let's go to. Okay, on the second, so we have this flow chart of nectar. And then we have a list here called Patterns in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'm taking this terminology from a book written by this scholar, William Smith, the late William Smith, Patterns in North Indian Hagiography. And I found it fascinating. He includes within this book references to Chaitanya Charitamrita, but he also includes several other what he calls hagiographies of North India, including some of the descriptions of Guru Nanak, I think also of Mirabai. Maybe there's, they're the famous saints of North India, and some which are less famous, Raidas and so on. And he sort of juxtaposes these different descriptions of their lives, and he teases out from them, or he comes to notice that there are patterns, there are similarities. And these are the main patterns that he has found, and within each of these, I didn't list them here, within each of these he has subcategories. So, descent, Balya Lila, marriage, renouncing the world, appearance, personality, powers, he puts together, darshan, satsang, Digvijaya, meeting the emperor, enemies, the Brahman opposition, temptation, sin and salvation, hard bhakti, and svargarohana. These are his categories. And I've listed here what just sort of quickly came to my mind as single examples for each of these, or more generally, I put for Bali Lila, Nimai's several adventures. So I just thought this is possibly helpful as you are reading Chaitanya Charitamrita to be aware that there's some kinship, if you like, with other traditions in terms of how they are remembering their saints. In other words, I think it's good to know that we're not alone in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition with respect to having similar understandings about the founder. In this case, we can say founder Acharya of our tradition, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as founder Acharya. I didn't have the time, or I didn't take the time, I suppose I should say, to prepare some comparisons. We could look up, well, it would take me a couple of minutes to do that. I could look for some of this, we can read it, but I think then we can do that during a break. And that's my next question, is when shall we have our next short break? I'm open to suggestions. We resumed at 1:20, it's now 3 o'clock. Should we have a little break now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a little break now.
Would
And
you like,
let's-
would you like us to come back?
I would like you to come back. I thought you were asking, would you like us to come back?
No,
No,
of course.